الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing our lesson, the Umdatul Fiqh of Imaam Ibn Qudaamah rahimahullah. Last week we were talking about the issues or the conditions. We finished the conditions for Hajj, and we explained the different categorizations of those conditions. And we also spoke about the conditions relating to women and who is and who's not a mahram. I just want to make the correction that I posted in the group about the numbers. So we said it was 21 last week. It's actually 18 based on what we counted. So 7, 7, and 4. So 21. And we also, so that's, 18. 18 is the correct number. 7, 7, 4, 18 maharim for women. And we also mentioned the 4x4 rules. That would also allow someone to memorize it. So all the maharim from the blood side, for the kingship, everyone is her mahram from the males except for the cousins. And from the marriage ties, her mahram would be then her father-in-law, the stepdad, son-in-law, and stepson. For everyone else, then they're not mahram. So we just wanted to correct the number. So it's 18 and not 21. طيب, now we move on to the next chapter, where the author, rahimahullah, he discusses the mawaqit. So he says, rahimahullah, Imam Ibn Qudaamah, Bab al-Mawaqit, chapter on the mawaqit. Mawaqit is a plural of miqat, and it has to do with the place in which you're going to make Hajj or Umrah, and the time in which you're going to make Hajj or Umrah. So the miqat, so mawaqit, miqat, in the Arabic language just means a had, a barrier or a boundary. In lugha, it's a had, a boundary. But technically, the word miqat refers to a zaman al-ibadah wa makanuha. Zaman al-ibadati wa makaniha. The place of worship, the timing of worship and its place. The timing of worship and its place. So when the author says Bab al-Mawaqit, what he means by that is the timing for certain acts of worship, in this case Hajj and Umrah, and the place in which you're going to make that act of worship. So it generally applies to all acts of worship, but when we say miqat, in terms of Hajj and Umrah, we know it's the place and the time in which someone's going to make ihram, al-ihram. You're going to enter with your niyyah, and then after that, with the clothing, the state of ihram. The state of ihram is the state you're in when you announce your intention that you're going to perform Hajj or Umrah. So when we say miqat, then the place and the time when you're going to do the ihram. And it's very important because a lot of people, they make a mistake in this. Because they either pass the miqat or not aware of the mawaqit where they are, to which then they entered into the state of ihram and they didn't pass the correct place. As for the time, most people, they get the time correct. Which leads to the next benefit. The mawaqit al-hajj, or all mawaqit, are two types, as you can tell by the definition. A miqat is two types, zamani wa makani, time and place. Time and place. So mawaqit then is the time, there's timing and there's place. So scholars usually, when they talk about it, they're talking about the one which is makaniya, the place. Because Hajj and Umrah, we know, you're passing, you're traveling on air, land, or sea to Mecca, and you're passing by the boundary in which you're supposed to do your ihram. So the place is usually what the focus is, but there's time and place. At the end of the chapter, the author, Ibn Qudaamah, talks about timing, but the place is also there, so both of them count. So before getting into the Hajj, let's talk about it in general, fi ibadat, and then we'll come back to Hajj Umrah, so it helps you to understand the idea of the miqat, time and place. So the ulama, they say when it comes to ibadat in general in the Sharia, you can divide all ibadat in accordance with mawaqit or tawqit in timing into three. So now this is not just Hajj Umrah, all across the board. First category, is an act of worship that has a miqatun zamani wa makani. An act of worship that has a time boundary and a place, a boundary of a place. And that is Hajj. So Hajj is the ibadah where there's a mawaqit zamani or miqat zamani wa makani. A time you have to do Hajj and a place you got to do it from. Okay? So Allah says, for example, Al-Hajju ashhurum ma'lumat. Hajj is specified months. What does it tell us? Time. Miqat zamani. So for example, you never see someone who say, I'm going to make Hajj in the Safar. Right? I don't know who's doing Hajj that time. It'll be empty, right? MashaAllah. Because it's invalid. Right? So no one's doing that. Whereas Umrah, we know, is different, right? Umrah is different. So that's the second category. Ibadat, they have miqat makani ila zamani. Acts of worship, they have a place where you have to do it, or where you start from, but not a time. And Umrah is a category. The Umrah, the whole year you can do it. But when you're doing it, you have to do the ihram from the miqat zamani. So for example, here in Canada, you can make Umrah any part of the year. But when you want to do Umrah, you can't do your ihram in Toronto. You have to do your ihram on the plane when you're passing by, wherever you're traveling from, the miqat. And we're going to get to that. Okay, so that's a good way to differentiate Hajj and Umrah. We can see they're a little bit different. And the third one, the third category, is an act of worship that has miqat zamani la makani. An act of worship that has a time period to do it, but not a place to do it. And those divide further into two. So acts of worship that have a time boundary and not a place boundary. Or a time to do it, not a place specifically to do it. Example, the Shaykh says, the Shaykh mentioned two categories. That one breaks into third categories, breaks into A and B. A, those in which the time is restricted and there's no difference on it. For example, Salah and Siyam. Salah and Siyam have a time period, not a place. You could put anywhere, but you have a time. In the Salah kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta. Salah for the believer is fixed time. Siyam, Ramadan. It's fixed, doesn't change. The 5 Salah every day is the same time. Periods generally, although the time might change here and there in terms of what time you pray, but it's Dhuhr is always at Dhuhr time, whatever that time comes in. And the second one, B, is that which changes its time in accordance to the person, the mukallaf. The time, second category, number B, or letter B, is the one in which the time will depend on you. And that's zakat. And we already studied it. When do you pay your zakat? When you reach the nisab. When do you reach the nisab? Depends. What time you reach it, you reach it. So that one has a miqat zamani, but up to you. Based on your savings and amount of money you have, nisab, the hawl. When does your hawl start? When does your Islamic year start? Whenever I get the money. So here we see that in the end you can divide the whole sharia across these things, so that way you can remember. And the reason why it's important to understand that, as you can probably tell, most of the ibadat have a miqat zamani more than a makani, is that we have to pay attention to these two things. You can't skip the time and the place. If the sharia says time and place are important, you must consider them. And it's therefore why, if someone is going to do Hajj or Umrah, he needs to know where we have to do it from, how I'm going to do it. If you do it your own way, then you're going to make a mistake, as we'll see that the cost of that, right, there is a penalty for someone who misses the miqat, right, knowingly. And of course, we know ignorance is an excuse, but someone should be careful of it. طيب, the author says, issue 963, وَمِيقَاتُ أَهْلُ الْمَدِينَةِ ذُو الْحُلَيْفَةِ. So he begins immediately by telling us the mawaqit makaniya, the boundaries, which are makaniya. Where do we get this idea from? Hadith. It's a hadith of Abdul Abbas, which centers around the whole conversation of the boundaries, the places where you start your ihram for Hajj or Umrah. And so let's look at the hadith first, and there are 5 of them. There are 5. And Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma قال إن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وقت لأهل المدينة ذو الحليفة ولأهل الشام الجحفة ولأهل نجد قرن المنازل ولأهل اليمن يلملم وهن لهن ولمن أتى عليهن من غيرهن ممن أراد الحج بالعمرة ومن كان دون ذلك فمن حيث أنشأ حتى أهل مكة من مكة. Hadith Bukhari and Muslim. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ stipulated the miqat for the people of Medina as Dhul Hulayfa. That's the first one. So that's what we're learning, the first one. So there are 5 in total. The people of Medina, they make ihram from Dhul Hulayfa. I'm going to explain each one. And the people of Sham, Greater Syria, from Al-Juhfa. Al-Juhfa. And the people of Najd from Qarn al-Manazil. Qarn al-Manazil. And the people of Yemen, Yalamlam. And it's for whoever is from those places or is passing through those places hoping to do Hajj or Umrah. So residents and non-residents. The non-residents, if you're doing Hajj or Umrah, you intend to do it and you're passing through it, as we'll get to, you're gonna join them from there too. We'll do it from there. And whoever is other than that, then he does his, that's the 5th one now, whoever is not in these places, he will do his Hajj or Umrah, his Ihram, from wherever he makes his intention, even the people of Mecca from Mecca. So the last category is wherever you are, if you're not passing these places, wherever you are, and you make the intention of Ihram, you do it from there. And we're going to explain all of them. And some scholars, they mention the last one, it comes in some of the hadith, and the people of Iraq, from that region, Dhatu Irqin. That's the last one. So you could say there's 5, and then a person who doesn't have. That's the way of understanding. So what we mentioned, Dhul Hulayfa, Al-Juhfa, Qarn Manazil, Yalamlam, and Dhatu Irqin. That's what people of Iraq. Dhatu Irqin. And if you're not in one of these 5, wherever you are. And whenever you make your intention. So that's the way you can understand it, because we're going to see the last group, the people of Jeddah, the people who are just passing, come from some part of the world, they don't pass any miqat. What do? So here the ulama, when they mention this hadith, this is the foundation for the chapter. And scholars then discuss whether this hadith, first of all, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it, of course, but the last one, Dhatu Irqin, who said this? Is it Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Or is it Umar who actually placed it? Because some of the scholars, they differed. Some of the riwayat, the hadith, they mention وقتها Umar bin Khattab. Umar made it from people of Iraq, because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at this time Iraq wasn't a Muslim country yet. And scholars, they discussed it, but what seems to be most correct is that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it. That's most correct. Right? So it's more to do with if it's that addition is authentic or not. Most correct view, it's authentic, and even those who said Umar said it doesn't bother the ruling, because ijma' anyways, when the people of Iraq to go past by it anyways. But what's more correct, as Alamat al-Shinqiti mentioned in Adwa al-Bayan, that it's Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam who said it. Okay, so now that we have these 5, and the people who don't pass by, they do where they are. The scholars, the Shaykh mentioned first, Ahlul Medina, from where? Dhul Hulayfa. Where is Dhul Hulayfa? So that's important to know these places and their current locations. Dhul Hulayfa now is called Abyar Ali. Abyar Ali. And many of us who go for Hajj Umrah, we know of it, because you probably pass by it. Right? If you're going from Medina, if you're doing an Umrah program, package or program, which you're coming from Medina, then you go from Dhul Hulayfa, and they call it Masjid al-Shajara. Masjid al-Shajara. The beautiful masjid, mashallah. So if you go there, you'll see it. It's marked as the Miqat al-Medina. So you go in there, it has showers and everything, so you do your ghusl, put on some itar on your body, not your ihram, right? And then you put on your ihram, nice and comfortable. It's not like when you're doing the air, right? In the air, it's like you gotta be careful. And we're gonna talk about it. If you're passing the air, going directly from Toronto to Mecca, you gotta be careful, because when you're passing, you gotta hurry. But if you're going from Medina, because you start from there, easy. So where is it now? It's approximately 18 kilometers from Masjid Nabawi. 18 kilometers. But from the Miqat, from Mecca, it's 410 kilometers. If you Google it, you can see it. There's actually a website, Hajj Umrah Planner. It has all the pictures and everything. So if you want to see it, what it looks like, and all the detail I'm reading from, hajjandumrahplanner.com. I just found it. It has a nice map and all the details. So it's very close to Masjid Nabawi, 410 kilometers from Mecca. طيب. So Masjid Shajara, Abyar Ali, Dhul Hulayfa. Nabi Sallam called Dhul Hulayfa. Today it's known as Abyar Ali or the Masjid Al-Shajara. It's very marked, clear. So who's going to do the ihram from there? Whoever is from Medina. So you live in Medina, you go there, start your ihram from there on your way to Mecca. And if you're in Medina, like us who travel, because we're not from Medina, why are we doing it there? What's the answer? Why are we doing our miqat, our ihram there? هن لهن ولمن أتى عليهن من غيرهن لمن أراد حج عمرة. It's for whoever lives there, whoever passed there, hoping to do Hajj Umrah. So since we're there for Hajj Umrah from there, Maniyah from there, or the program is already designed, we're going to go and make Umrah from there when we do our miqat from there. That's the rule. Once you have the intention to make Hajj Umrah from a particular place, you go to the nearest miqat, not the furthest one. You don't say, from Toronto, I'm going to go miqat somewhere else. No, you're in Medina now, you're with them. And this is important because obviously you're not going to find anyone who's going to tell you just leave there and just keep going. Hence we learn that by default, Jeddah by itself is not a ihram, it's not a miqat, is it? See, some people they say, I'm going to do the miqat from Jeddah. Jeddah is only for certain cases, not also miqat. Because Nabi Sallallahu told us all this. But the people will say, how about if I'm Ahlul Mecca or I don't have a place for passing? There's exceptions. But the rule is the closest miqat. So if you're in Medina, Dhul Hulayfa. Next one, the Shaykh mentions now, issue 964, and the miqat to Ahlul Sham, wal Maghrib, wal Misr, al Juhfa. So he says the miqat, the people of Greater Syria, this is what Rasul said, but Ibn Qudaamah adds, and the people of Morocco, and that region, and people of Egypt, is al Juhfa. And why did he mention all those other groups? Because those groups typically are going to be passing through that region. They usually pass around that area. So if you look at the map, or if you were to Google a map, you will see the Juhfa where it is. 183 kilometers roughly from Mecca. 182, 183. It's northwest of Mecca. So because we're coming from North America, some of the scholars they say, or some of this website says, for example, the Sheikh said Egypt, right? You can also include in it people coming from Algeria, Morocco, Europe, and North America. So us, we go through Al-Juhfa. Because if you look at it, we're coming northwest, we're coming like this. Right? So I can't show you, but unless you go on your phone and look at a map, you can see where it is. So the flight pattern, you'll see, we're going to pass it like this. So, and then we come down to Jeddah. So because we're going through there, you notice that when you're like, give or take more an hour or more, I don't know exactly, hour or 2 hours or so before you get to Mecca, you start seeing, they're telling you, if you're going on Saudi Airlines or something, you're getting ready for the miqat. So what you notice then, if you look back, you're going through Juhfa. So the idea is, people coming from that region, and we're going to talk about what does it mean passing, what does passing mean? But now you get the point. They're not going to do Dhul Hulayfa because they're not passing there. طيب, number 965. And the people of Yemen, Yalamlam. And now they call it Sa'adiyya, I believe. But where is Yalamlam? If you look at it, Sa'adiyya, I think they call it. It's about 100 kilometers from Mecca, from the south of Mecca. Right? So it's a masjid, or like a you could call it more like a marking. It looks like a masjid, but it's more of a, like a landmark with washrooms and showers. And why they always have washrooms and showers there? So you can do your ghusl beforehand, as we'll get to, with the sunnah of ihram. Yalamlam is 100 kilometers south of Mecca. So whose miqat is this? Is it for people of Yemen? Right? And so whoever else passes, some scholars say it's about 80 kilometers. So give or take, there's some dispute there. So some say people coming from South Africa and Nigeria and those regions, because they're coming this way, they will pass it. And we'll see the rule is, wherever you're traveling, however you're traveling, you go, wherever you pass, you pass. So it's not like a fixed rule. Maybe if you're taking a different flight pattern or something happening differently, whatever one's nearest to you, that's one you're going to use. The Shaykh then, he mentions issue 966. When people of Najd, they go through a place called Qarn al-Manazil. So Najd, we know, the region, the ulama, when they talk about Najd, usually we're talking about that region, right? Like we're now, for example, Riyadh and beyond. Not just, because there's more than one usage for the word Najd, right? We know that sometimes it refers to the people of the east, and sometimes it refers to people of Iraq, and so here it's referring to the people from that region. So they go to a place called Qarn al-Manazil. And so Qarn al-Manazil, also known as Sail, it's 80 kilometers. So Qarn al-Manazil is 80 kilometers east of Mecca. So people coming from Riyadh, UAE, Pakistan, Australia, those regions are coming from the east, they're passing through Qarn al-Manazil. So Qarn al-Manazil is 80 kilometers or kilometers from Mecca, from the east. And on the issue, Shaykh now he mentions issue 967, and the people of the east, and further than that, that's Iraq. So here he said the east. So people, Iraq and those beyond it. So obviously, if you're going even further east, right? So you're going to pass by that one. That Iraq, it's about 90 kilometers northeast of Mecca. So it's like northeast. So people coming from Iraq, Iran, China, Russia, all those regions, they're going to come from that side, they'll pass it. So these are the different mawaqit that we have. And then, so that's 5, right? Right? Is it 5? Yeah. And Ahl Mecca we'll get to in a second. So the basis then, the Shaykh already told us, if those passing by those regions, whoever intends Hajj and Umrah, which leads us to the issue of the person who's passing by these places and he's not intending anything. Right? What is his ruling? So the scholars, they say that when somebody is passing by these regions and he doesn't intend Hajj or Umrah, is he supposed to do the Ihram from there, or does he go past it, go where he's going, and then from there continue? And the most correct opinion is that the person who's passing a miqat and he has no intention for Hajj or Umrah, he doesn't start from there. Go and do what he's doing, whatever city he's in. When the intention comes, then he can go to his nearest miqat. Because the hadith is very clear, لِمَنْ كَانَ يُرِيدُ حَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةِ. So the example, today when we go for Umrah, most people go to, or as many packages, start from Medina. In Medina, we passed Juhfa, we passed Jeddah, if we're going to Ahl Mecca, we pass all this, then we go right to Medina. And what are we doing? We're not going for Hajj Umrah right now. Our intention now is just to see the Masjid Rasul Sallallahu, to enjoy ourselves, and then we have the intention, because it's already planned. So then we go to Dhul Hulayfa. That's not wrong. Another example, somebody, he's going to visit his uncle in Jeddah. What does he do his ihram? He might do Umrah, maybe not. So he just goes to Jeddah like normal. As if his time, whatever he's doing, then he says, you know what, I'm going to make Umrah now. What does he do now? He's going to start from there. He's going to go to Ahl Mecca, as we'll see. And we're going to see Ahl Mecca, what they have to do. Another example will be somebody who's not sure. I'm going to make Umrah, I'm not going to make Umrah. I don't know what's going on. Let's see. Can I make it on time? I'm not sure. Then he's free. He's not making Hajj Umrah. But the person who's intending Hajj Umrah and he's passing, then he has to pass by the nearest miqat. Otherwise, he committed a mistake which requires fidya, right? The kafara, the expiation. So we learn here that the one who doesn't intend that, no problem, you can pass. And it's a qawl sahih amongst ulama. It's not wajib on a person, even if he intends to make Umrah after that, his first intention first. Then after that he'll make it. So then if he passes that without intending to Hajj or Umrah, he's not sinful. Okay, so now that we have these 5, Ahl Mecca, the Shaykh will mention in a second what they're supposed to do. But we also want to mention a side benefit. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that the people of Iraq, they're going to go from that to Irqin. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's time, that was not considered from the Muslim lands. Not even Sham even at that time, 100%. So this is from the proofs of prophethood. This is from the proofs of the miracles of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Because he spoke about mawaqit and he numbered them 5 at a time when Juhfa, which is right for the people of Sham, and Dhatu Irqin wasn't even, or Iraq wasn't a Muslim country yet. Right, so this is a beautiful benefit. And Ibn Abdul Qawi, rahimahullah, he mentions this in some lines of poetry. وتعيينها من معجزات نبينا لتعيينه من قبل فتح المعدد. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam specifying this from the miracles of our Prophet, where he specified it before the conquest was even done or performed. See, so the proofs of Prophet are many. Imagine Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam talking about here and here and here. At that time, you think, who's even coming from there? There's nobody there. Allahu Akbar. So that's just a nice benefit some of the ulama mentioned. Okay, now that we mentioned all of this, the Shaykh then he moves on, Ibn Qudaamah, rahimahullah. He says, فَوَهَذِهِ الْمَوَاقِيتِ لِأَهْلِهَا وَلِكُلِّ مَنْ يَمُرُّ عَلَيْهَا. It is the mawaqit for those people who live there and whoever passes by it, and we already mentioned, if you have the intention of Hajj Umrah. If you don't have the intention of Hajj Umrah, then you can pass by them, no problem. And then he says, issue, so that was issue 968. Whoever passes, these are the miqats for the people who live there, and whoever is passing through there. Issue 969, وَمِن مَنْزِلِهِ دُونَ مِقَاتٍ فَمِقَاتُهُ مِن مَنْزِلِهِ. And whoever's house is not in line with these mawaqit, then he does the Umrah and Hajj, he does the Ihram from wherever his house is. So what does that mean? Somebody who has nothing, is not in this range. So he does it wherever he is. He's going to do it from wherever he is. So example would be certain places in certain countries, depending on how they travel, they will never pass by or come close to or equivalent to a miqat. So in that case, what do? He said from their house. For example, people who are living in Mecca or Jeddah or something like this, or people who are passing to and the closest miqat for them will be maybe in Jeddah. By the time you get to Jeddah, they haven't passed anything yet. Then they'll just do it from there. And so here we learn that if someone doesn't have any miqat he's passing through, then wherever is the closest miqat, or he can even do it from his house. Although, as we'll see, when it says that his house, what is really intended is the people who are very close, right, or in Saudi Arabia, or very close, versus those who are far. Because let's say the people of Sudan, it's a good example. People of Sudan, they're not going to do it from their house in Sudan. So by the traveling, where they're going to come from, depends on how they're traveling. They might come from the north, a little bit south, but the point is by the time they reach, they might not pass anything. So if some scholars say they come, in the closest place they come to is Jeddah, then they're like Ahl Mecca from there. Go ahead. Because they didn't pass anything. And we'll see that in a second. There are people in different places, and even some people who are supposed to come from one route, they came another route. So ultimately, if you're not in one of the 5, then you do it wherever you are, because the hadith clearly mentions, and whoever is other than that, from wherever he is. And that's the point that we're trying to highlight, and he's trying to say the Shaykh. Right? فَمَنْ كَانَ دُونَهُنَّ فَمُهَلُّهُ مِنْ أَهْلِهِ. And whoever is besides these places, he does it from his own family or residence. Obviously, now we're going to get to how the miqat is passed. And this is the most important part, because the Shaykh then he gets into the issue of Mecca, what they do, and then he talks about the issue of issue 972. So we're going to get to the, okay, let's just keep going, we'll get to there. So 970. He says then, حتى أهل Mecca, the people of Mecca, they will do the ihram from, right, where they are. So scholars now they say the people of Mecca, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us to do the ihram from Mecca. That's their miqat. But now, is it for Hajj and Umrah, or Umrah or Hajj, or both? Here the scholars they differed. And what seems to be correct, most scholars they mention, if it comes to Hajj versus Umrah, for Hajj, the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us this hadith, what they're going to do. They're going to do it from where they are. When it comes to Umrah, it's a little bit different. And Ibn Qudaamah, he mentions it in the next point, 9671. He says, وَيُهِلُّونَ, and they will make the ihram أهل مكة لعمرة من حل. So Hajj and Umrah are different. Hajj, from wherever you are. So if you're out of your house, if you're in Ahl Mecca, and you go. But if you live in Mecca and you want to make Umrah, the Shaykh says from the Hill, you gotta get out the Haram. And you gotta go outside the status, the Haram, and then come back in from there. And we'll talk about now, what does that mean? What's Hill and Haram mean? Al-Hill, it means that when you're outside the boundaries of the Haram. Haram is a sanctuary, right? A boundary. It means the Masjid Haram and the regions around it which are considered Haram. So the Haram means a sacred land. Medina has a Haram, Mecca has a Haram. The reason why it's important when you're inside the Haram, there's certain etiquette you have to behave with and adhere to, and obviously when it comes to the mawaqit. So if you go on the website, again, Umrah Hajj Planner, you can see for example, a picture of the boundary, the Haram, and how big it is, and you can see what's outside the Haram, what's inside of it. So if you're doing Hajj, and you're in Mecca, where do you do your Ihram? From Mecca. You don't have to get out the Haram, you stay in the Haram. So let's say you live in the Haram. If you live outside the Haram, no problem, you're already outside, right? But even if you lived in the Haram, no problem. So that's for Hajj. Because Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he's talking about this hadith, what was he talking about? This hadith aside, the hadith of Abbas, the origin of our chapter, what is it about? Hadith of Hajj. So in Hajj, Nabi sallallahu told us, وَكَذَلِكَ حَتَّى أَهْلُ مَكَّةِ يُهِلُّونَ مِنْهَا. Ahl Mecca, they make their ihram from where they are. So Nabi sallallahu the whole hadith of Mecca, Hajj. So Hajj, no problem. It's Umrah then where they differed. Why they differ in Umrah? Because they said Umrah is not like Hajj. Umrah, there's another hadith we have to show that the person doing Umrah has to get out. The Haram has to go to the Hill and come back in. And I'm sure you see this, right? People who are doing multiple Umrahs, right? It's a khilaf ahl ilm, right? Scholars differ. Let's say someone's going to do 2 or Umrahs or not. Is that even recommended? Right? So we just won't talk about it now, but Islamically it's probably disputable, right? Should you do multiple Umrahs? But let's say someone wants to. Okay, what are you going to do your second Umrah from? The Haram or the Hill? So the correct, many scholars say from the Hill. You got to get out and come back in. And of course, the second opinion is where you are. Just keep going. And so where is the difference of opinion coming from? Hajj, everyone, we all have that, the hadith there. So that's clear and it's agreed upon. But for Mecca, for Medina, so for the Umrah, they differed into 2 groups. The majority of scholars, they say you have to leave. You have to leave the Haram and go to the Hill. So again, going to the map, you will see that you have to go, either take a taxi, we'll use a taxi, outside the Haram, and then do your Ihram there, come back in. And the second group of scholars, like Imam As-San'ani, and also it seems to be what Zahir, Wallahu A'lam, what Imam Al-Bukhari indicates in his Sahih, that you can do it from the Haram, doesn't matter. Okay, so the majority of scholars inside, you have to get out and come back in. And the minority, so all 4 madhabs, they agree to that. And in some of the minority opinions, like Imam As-San'ani, Imam Al-Bukhari, and others, they say you can do it. Hajj and Umrah, Ahl Mecca can do it from Haram, from the Haram. Now the point is, me and you, when we come to do Hajj or Umrah, let's use example Umrah, we come to do Umrah in Mecca, we're not Ahl Mecca. But when we come to Mecca, we're Ahl Mecca now, because we're in their region. That's why it concerns you too, to know what you're supposed to do, because now you're Ahl Mecca, you're with them. So the first group of scholars, in 4 madhabs, how do they argue? They say, well, this is Hadith Aisha, this is a dalil. And we all heard this hadith. We know about Masjid Aisha, most of us we know, the Tan'een. This hadith is a dalil that one uses, hadith Bukhari, Muslim, Sahihain. And the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, أمر عبد الرحمن bin Abi Bakr أن يخرج بأخته عائشة إلى التنعيم. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam commanded is Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Bakr to go out with his sister Aisha to Tan'im and make ihram there. This is the asl of their proof. And what was Aisha radiallahu anha trying to do at that time? So the scholars, they say that he told him, أخرج بأختك, go Abdurrahman with your brother Aisha, and your brother Abdurrahman, take your sister, Aisha, min al-haram, from the haram, and go out of it, وتهل بعمرة, then make the intention of Umrah. And this is the wording of Bukhari, and wording of Muslim. So Nabi ﷺ, why did he tell her to do that? Except that it's a must for Umrah to get out. That's the proof. If it didn't matter, Nabi ﷺ wouldn't have told her that, to go out. And the other group of scholars, they have a response to that, because they say, well, Zahir Hadith, right, of the Hadith we already cited. They say, Ahlul Makkah, yuhillun min Makkah. Zahir al-Nas, Ahlul Makkah from Makkah. And Hadith Aisha is not clear proof. But the other group, then they try to respond by saying that there's a clear command, but also there's a discussion about the Hil and Haram, right? And without going more into detail, they try to argue at the end of the day that everyone who does Hajj and Umrah is going to become doing some kind of exiting the Haram and entering it. So the argument, Ahl Mecca, when it comes to Hajj and Umrah, for Hajj they exit the Haram, so they go from the Haram if you have been there, and Umrah they leave it. And everybody else, they're always going to leave and come. So you're coming from outside the Hil to the Haram, then you get out of it. So they say at the end of the day, it's always that case. Every time you go for Hajj or Umrah, you're always going in and out of the Haram anyways. So it's not possible that somebody who's Ahlul Mecca doing Umrah and he's never left the Haram. Right? It's because the argument that they're saying that Ahlul Mecca from Mecca. That would only make sense if you told me that the person doing Hajj, when does he leave the Haram? When he goes to Arafah. And he goes out there, over there. So some scholars say that people of Mecca, if they live in Mecca, they always go in and out of the Haram somehow, some way. But if I told you today there's a person who lives in Mecca, he never left the Haram, and he was in it and he did Umrah. It's the say from the Qawa'id of Deen, we don't have ibadah like that. So it's like more of a rational argument. Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah uses. But what's the conclusion? If you're trying to do a second Umrah, or somebody lives in Mecca and is doing Umrah, or arrived in Mecca and is going to do Umrah, then it's safer and better to go outside the Haram and come back. But if someone took the other view, then many of our contemporary scholars, I believe, they also hold that view. I'm not going to be certain Shaykh Ibn Baz Rahimahullah's view, but some of the scholars, our contemporary scholars, are also of that opinion. They say Ahl Mecca, Mecca. But I got to double check some of the contemporary scholars' view. But some of the scholars of that view, because San'ani Bukhari held that view. So at the end of the day, at least you understand why they say that, right? So then next time you're there, you're not going to be like, okay, should I take an exit? So where do you go outside? How do you get outside the Haram anyways? Scholars say all you have to do is you have to go out to anywhere that's outside the Haram. Anywhere outside the Haram. So Tan'im, right? Or Arafah, right? For example. Or other places, right? There are many places. And so therefore scholars say this. So it's not that far away, right? Right? Sometimes it's 15, 20 minutes, not even, right? To just get in and out. Especially if you're going to take a taxi or the likes of this. So now we understood that issue and the difference of opinion there. Now we have to understand what does it mean passing the miqat, because this part is the most important part in relation to what is the Shaykh trying to tell us. He says 972. I think this is the last. There's a bunch of issues here. So we'll try to summarize the last issues to get to the heart of it. 972, the Shaykh says, whoever is in the path or in his pathway is the miqat, فَمِقَاتُهُ حَدْوَ أَقْرَبُهَا إِلَيْهِ. Whoever is passing by a miqat, then his miqat, for example, is when he's either passing it or he's equivalent. And he's literally on its equivalence. And we'll talk about what that means. And in 973, it is not permissible, he says, the one who intends Mecca, to enter Mecca, to pass the miqat without making ihram, except for a permissible battle or a permissible need, which is repetitive or the like. So what he's trying to say is the only exception is someone entering without doing ihram, someone has an excuse. And we already explained that. You're allowed to enter if you want to do Hajj Umrah. We already explained that. 974, if he passes it without doing ihram, then he says here, without doing ihram, then he has to go back to the miqat and do it from there. If he goes back to the miqat and does it from there, لا ولا الدم عليه لأنه إحرام من miqat. So what he said is, if you passed the miqat, didn't do ihram, and didn't do anything, go back to the miqat, do the ihram, and enter, you don't have to do any sacrifice. Because you passed, but you went back and you rectified. So scholars, they talk about somebody who passed the miqat without doing ihram when they were supposed to. What are they supposed to do? Go back, he was able to put on the ihram, and get in the state of ihram, then pass. And you're good, you're cleared, because you didn't break anything, you didn't do anything wrong. But it says 975, if someone put on the ihram, past the miqat, then he has to pay the blood, even if he goes backwards. He has to do sacrifice. So imagine someone past it, then put on the miqat, then realize, oh, I've crossed the miqat already. What does he have to do? He has to sacrifice. Doesn't matter if he goes back or not, just keep going. In that case, you just take your loss, and you keep going. Because you passed it. But who is this person we're talking about? Somebody who was aware of this. متعمدا. Not ignorant, unaware. Because the Sharia always takes into account, as we study, forgetfulness, mistake, and ignorance. So most people you find today, they're ignorant. Happens to most people. They come, by the time they realize, like, what happened? In the airplane, for example, the scholars, they say, is the biggest example of this. You're going Toronto to Jeddah using Air Saudiya. You go direct flight. When you're passing, you will find when it tells you the ihram, the miqat is coming close, you better hurry up and put on your ihram, because by the time you try to go to the washroom, put it on as a lineup, you might pass it, because the airplane's going how many hundreds of kilometers per hour. You're like, oh, I have time. Like, the airplane's going fast, not like driving a car. It's going to go sometimes very fast. So some people, they start way early, 3, 4, 5 hours, So is that allowed or not? Scholars, they differ. Can you put on miqat the ihram before the miqat, or not allowed? There's 3 opinions. And the best is to do it just before, but there's no harm to do before, but significantly before that. So let's say some people, you see 1-2 hours, he put on the ihram. Better than someone last minute is fumbling at the washroom and he passes. And a lot of people do this. Some of the ulama, like Sheikh Sa'ad, he mentions that many people, they don't know this. So you see him relaxing, he doesn't realize it's not a car, it's a plane. It's going so fast. By the time you realize you passed, you passed it. So we have to be mindful to people that when you're passing, when you're airplane, get ahead. Be mindful. It's makruh to be ahead, haram to be after. That's qawl sahih. Makruh to be put on the ihram before the miqat, but haram after, because we said you're going to have to play sacrifice. And this is if you know it. You knew it's coming and you're like just sitting there relaxing. And you look at the airplane, most people, that's what they're doing. They're just sitting there, nobody's panicking. Because, everybody's ignorant, right? It says on the airline, the guy's saying on the mic, we're past the miqat, or getting close, we're just sitting there, and mashallah, I don't know what they as he mentions, most people hate this, subhanAllah, may Allah forgive us. So someone's ignorant, no problem. Or someone, he knows. And it leads to another point, that if the person is aware of this, and he has to prepare, which means when you're going on the airplane, where do you keep your ihram? Your hand luggage. You don't check it in. So what do you do? What do you do if that happens to you? That's a musibah, right? You put your ihram in the check-in, khalas, it's already in the Holy Lands, right? So what do you do in that case? It happened to some people. They realize, where's my ihram? It's like, what are you doing? Because you didn't know that. It's not their fault. No one tells people this stuff. We're just going in there. Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah fatwa says, in that case, take off your thobe and put it around your neck. Allah labbaik umrah. Khalas. So you see the miskin guy coming with his thobe, that's the guy who checked in his luggage, But he still has to put on a so take it off, put it, wrap it. Even though, what can he do, right? He can't do better than that. So we encourage people to be mindful of that. Now we want to finish with the issue the Shaykh finishes with, 975, 976. He talked about before that, and the most important, what does it mean passing the miqat? And this is the part where people have to understand. There's 5 ways to pass the miqat, or 5 conditions. And some of them have to do what we already mentioned, but we're going to maybe summarize today's lesson with this 5 different ways. Alright, so the halat or ahwal of passing the miqat is 5. Number 1, you're passing directly through it. In that case, you do the ihram right there. You get in a state of ihram right there. So let's say I'm coming from Medina, I'm right at Dhul Hulayfa. So no problem. Get inside Masjid Shajara, do your stuff, go. Because you're right there. You're literally passing through it. That's the easy one. Number 2. And who's the one who's passing through it? The one who has the intention of Hajj Umrah. Number 2. The person who is not passing directly, but passing equivalent to that miqat. What they say? بِمُحَاذَاةٍ. Muhadha means here, I'm not exactly at the miqat, but I'm equivalent on the line of it. I'm similar to where it is. So what's the dabit? Scholars say the rule is, if the distance between you and the Kaaba is the same distance between the miqat and the Kaaba, then you're equivalent. Example, I'm coming from the south, and I come to Yalamlam, and it's 92 kilometers away, let's say. And by where I am, it's 92 kilometers from the Kaaba. Then, I'm equivalent. Do you ihram right there? Get in the state of it, go in. And this is the key. That's what we're doing in the airplane. When we're passing directly over Juhfa, when we come from North America, or you're passing around its regions. So this part is very important because the scholars, when they talk about being equivalent, there's lots of conversation. What does that mean? So an example would be Dhul Hulayfa, right? We give an example. Let's say Dhul Hulayfa, someone is coming to Dhul Hulayfa, and Dhul Hulayfa is, let's say, 400 kilometers, right, from Mecca. Although it's, let's see, 450. So let's say it's 450 kilometers. And where I'm coming from, my pathway is 400. I reach a point where I'm 450 kilometers away from the Kaaba. I'm equal to the miqat, to the miqat from there. Because I'm not category 1, I'm not passing right through it. I'm in the equivalence. And that's where some people make the mistake. Because he thinks, oh, the miqat's not around me. No, but you're on the same line of it. You see, that's the dabit. If you have similar kilometers between you and the Kaaba as the miqat and the Kaaba, then you have to do it. So before you go for Hajj Umrah, you can obviously see, and online you can calculate. It's very easy. And airlines now, they help, or even if you're in a car or something, they will let you know. Third state, you don't pass, nor are you equivalent to the miqat. Somebody is coming in a direction, he's neither passing through it directly, nor in the same distance of it. In that case, the scholars, they say this person, he will make his ihram when he gets to either the closest place, right, that is to the miqat, and if the case that he passes none of them, then wherever he is. An example would be, people mentioned the people of Sudan. Depending on what there's a couple of fatwas on this. Sheikh Uthaymin, Sheikh Bin Baz, rahimahumullah, they pass fatwa about people of Sudan, people of Ethiopia, Somalia. Depending on where they're traveling, they're not passing through the miqat. So, just an example, Sheikh Bin Baz fatwa, he mentions fatwa. He says, when asked the people of Sudan, how do they do the ihram at the miqat? He says, in accordance to their travel. If they pass by, for example, Juhfa, then they do it from there. If they're equivalent, then do it from there. If they're not able to do anything before getting to Jeddah, then they do it from Jeddah. Because that is the closest for them if they wish to Hajj Umrah. So you can see that group of people, why they're doing it there. Because in the past, if you go now to old Mecca, you'll see where the Hujjaj used to come. Recently in Saudi, they renovated the area. So in part of the city in Jeddah, where a quarter of Jeddah, where the people of Umrah used to come, Hajj is a kind of old-fashioned place. So people from Sudan, other places used to come reside there or get ready for Hajj Umrah. So that person is not passing by anything. So he's not equivalent, not passing. So when he gets to Jeddah, that's the closest. Now he's like Ahl Mecca, from there, go. Right? Or the people of that region, he's right from there. So that person is doing from Jeddah, not me and you who are coming past the miqat or passing it. Fourth case, people of Mecca, a resident of Mecca. So in that case, we said the person in Mecca, his mawaqit, he will make it from where he is, if he's doing Hajj. As for Umrah, we said he has to go, the most correct opinion, he has to get out of the Haram and go to the Hill. But if he's trying to do Hajj, then from where he is. Same for people of Jeddah or any other region close by in those regions of Saudi Arabia. ومن كان دون ذلك كما في الحديث فمن حيث أنشأ حتى أهل مكة من مكة. And whoever is besides the five mentioned in the hadith, the Prophet said, and he makes the ihram from wherever his intention is formed, even the people of Mecca from Mecca. And this is for Hajj. The fifth one, the one who is from people of Mecca, and he wants to do Umrah, then he's going to do the ihram from the Hill, not the Haram. He has to get out the Haram and come back in. Khalas. So the key of this which will summarize the lesson, is that when you pass the miqat, either you're passing directly or into equivalence. So you must make sure before you're planning where you're coming from. And once you notice that you're passing by the miqat and you're coming for Hajj or Umrah, you must make the intention and prepare for getting a state of ihram in that region. And if you pass it, after knowing it's there and being aware of this, then you have to do the sacrifice. And we'll talk about that at the end. Inshallah, we'll end with this much. Bidna ta'ala. And we'll have any questions, inshallah. Yes. The fourth one is from, so you could say the fourth one, the people of Mecca who are doing Hajj from where they are. And the fifth one for doing Umrah, people of Mecca from the hill. That's the difference. Yes, Pastor.
From Bangladesh. So Bangladesh and Jeddah almost 3 hours time difference. 1,000 kilometers difference. Most of the officials, they take their ihram in after hours before. So okay, it's not true for them.
So this is a good question. So the brother is saying from Bangladesh, the people is 6 hours from there, Bangladesh to Jeddah, 3,000 kilometers. So if they do the ihram from the airport, it is permissible, yes. Only makruh, not haram. But if they're able to do it in the airplane, closer, it's better. Because the third opinion of the scholars, anytime you do the ihram, closer is better. Because some scholars say you have to do it when you're getting there. But some say if you're not sure, before it's safer. Yeah. It's very difficult, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes. So it's very difficult. And you see many countries, they do that. In Egypt, in other places, they do it there in the airport because they know by the time it's coming. So scholars say it's makruh only to do before, but haram to do it after. And that's why you find people, they always good to be careful. But what's not allowed, people is waiting there and then he's passing and then he gets his luggage. It's too late. Okay, and any last questions? Yes. So good question. Somebody, he did Umrah in Medina, Mecca. Then he went to Medina for visitation. Then he wants to, on his way back from Medina to Mecca, do another one. So repeating the Umrah, scholars say if somebody left the Haram, or there's a significant time, or he went somewhere else and came back, it's permissible for him to do another one. The dispute was in one trip. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he did Hajj or Umrah, he only did one Hajj or one Umrah per trip. Now the scholars, they don't say it's haram, but some of them they say it's not sunnah, or not legislated. Some they say it's better not to, and they differed. How you know a time changed? They say your hair grows back because if you're bald, what are you gonna do? You go to the barber, it's already clean. He's just gonna wipe it over. So some say you wait for the hair to grow back, then you cut. Then it's time. Some say you left the city, and some they say like for example here in Canada in the West, but probably you never know you're gonna come back again for a long time. So because of this, it's not haram, inshallah. But it's preferable if someone knows that maybe he's going to come back another time, it does not must. But leaving the city is an example where I can come back, do Umrah again, then go to Jeddah and then go home. That's allowed because you left. But the problem we have today, somebody's in the hotel, he says, you know what, I want to do another one. He gets up and he goes all the way, some far place, for no other reason, except to come right back. And sometimes you find that it's not necessary that he did that, knowing that most people in the West, they can come back again and again and again. So now with how open it is. So inshallah, it's not wrong if someone did that. Barakallahu feekum. Inshallah, we'll end with this much. Subhanakallah bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.